What if the most powerful tool for healing the mind wasn't a pill, a therapist's couch, or a meditation app, but a blank page and a pen? This is Editing the Narrative, an exploration of how the act of writing fiction can serve as a practical, structured mechanism for cognitive repair. Not escapism, not therapy in disguise, a genuine technology for rebuilding the story of who you are.
Our identity is not like a filing cabinet, a static collection of facts about ourselves. Where we were born, what we've done, dates, places, events. Psychologist Dan McAdams argues that identity isn't a collection of facts. It's the story we tell about ourselves. It is an internalized life story that gives us a sense of unity, purpose, and meaning. It's the cognitive framework we use to navigate the world and make sense of adversity. We organize our past into chapters, punctuated by high points, low points, and turning points. If your life is a story, who writes it? Who brings meaning to your life's history? We can allow external voices tell us what our story means and who we should be. Or we can look inside, let our internal voice speak to us. We can write our own story.
Here's the problem. Life doesn't always cooperate. The plot shifts erratically, events come at us haphazardly. Characters enter or leave our lives, complicating or easing our way. Traumatic events do not just cause pain. They rupture the narrative structure of our lives. The upward arc we'd been living suddenly collapses into chaos. This rupture can take three distinct forms. The first is narrative silence, when an experience is so intense, so overwhelming, that it simply cannot be verbalized in linear, literal terms. The words don't exist for what happened. The second is the doom loop, a contamination pattern where recurring negative outcomes consistently overwhelm any positive events, locking the person in a cycle of defeat. And the third is loss of voice, perhaps the most disorienting of all. The individual shifts from being the active author of their life to a passive character in someone else's unpredictable plot. These three disruptions are the reason we have to become adept at writing, editing, and rewriting the meaning of our life.
So why fiction specifically? Why not just write about what happened directly? Here's the challenge with memoir and autobiography. They're tethered to empirical fact. That direct exposure can trigger reliving the trauma, amplifying it instead of healing it. Fiction offers something different. It provides what researchers call a safe distance model. Imagine the author on one side, a difficult memory on the other, and between them stands a fictional character, acting as both a mask and a shield. The author can approach the painful material through the character without being overwhelmed by it. This protective veil of fictional truth allows for safe exploration without direct exposure. And the result? The writer can bypass their own internal defense mechanisms and actively process deep emotional truths, truths that direct writing might have locked away entirely. Now, here's where the neuroscience gets fascinating. Your brain doesn't fully distinguish between reading or writing fiction and living a real experience. The same neural circuits that fire during real-world social interaction and problem-solving are activated when you engage with a story. This is the mirror neuron system at work. When you write a character going through something difficult, your brain experiences those trials as if they were your own, giving you a form of emotional regulation practice in a completely low-risk environment. There's also something called cognitive simulation at play. The brain genuinely rehearses solutions, processes emotions, and builds resilience through fictional scenarios. And finally, there's targeted focus. The act of storytelling actually numbs awareness of your immediate environment, allowing you to sink into deep, uninterrupted emotional processing without the panic of real-time reliving. Fiction isn't a distraction from processing, it is the processing. To understand where fiction writing works its magic, we need to understand how personality is actually structured, according to McAdams' three-level framework. At the base are your traits, the broad behavioral habits captured by models like the Big Five: extroversion, neuroticism, openness, conscientiousness, agreeableness. These are highly resistant to change. They are the bedrock of who you are. In the middle are your habits, the context-specific routines, roles, and adaptations you have developed for navigating different life situations. These are moderately changeable. At the top, the apex of the pyramid, is your story, your narrative identity. This is the most fluid and meaning-rich layer of all. It is highly editable. And here is the key insight. We cannot easily erase our baseline traits, but the story layer? That's where transformation lives. It is the primary site for psychological repair. Fiction writing operates precisely at this level, the one place where change is not only possible, but natural.
When it comes to actually rewriting a damaged narrative, research identifies two distinct paths. Neither is better than the other. They serve different situations and different needs. The first is the redemption arc. Its goal is to overcome obstacles and transform pain into growth. Think of the classic hero's journey: a fall, a struggle, and a triumphant rise. The outcome is recovery of lost strength, mastery, and the sustained hope that setbacks can be weathered. The second is the acceptance model. Its goal isn't triumph, it's integration. This path is for realities that cannot be changed, losses that cannot be undone. Rather than demanding a happy ending, it seeks wisdom, flexibility, and a new stable equilibrium, a bittersweet peace that is nonetheless real. Both frameworks are valid. Both are healing. The art lies in knowing which story the moment calls for.
So how does fictional repair actually work in practice? Researchers have identified 4 core mechanics. The first is reframing, using what-if scenarios to explore alternate paths. Instead of ruminating on what went wrong, you give a character the choice you never had. The second is distancing, writing in the third person, using characters to observe painful experiences without being consumed by them. You become the narrator, not the victim. The third is externalizing, taking invisible, inexpressible emotions and giving them physical form, a shape, a color, a weight, something you can interact with on the page. And the fourth is meaning-making, writing toward a future legacy, crafting stories where struggle leads to something that matters beyond the present moment. These 4 mechanics work together, and each one targets a different dimension of the damaged narrative.
The first method, reframing, works through what is called the what-if scenario. Here's the mechanic. The author creates a fictional character facing a dilemma identical to their own. But instead of following the path that actually happened, they guide the character toward a different choice, a different outcome. The function of this exercise is subtle but powerful. It replaces ruminative if-only thinking, that endless, painful loop of regret, with creative what-if possibility. The brain shifts from a closed conclusion to an open exploration. And the outcome? Counterfactual reasoning safely reduces the emotional weight of past setbacks. The event doesn't disappear from memory, but its grip loosens. What felt like a verdict becomes a plot point. The story isn't over. It just took a different turn. The second method addresses one of the most common dangers in trauma writing: re-traumatization through first-person reliving. When you write directly as yourself in a moment of crisis, it can feel like being swept under a massive wave, consumed, overwhelmed, unable to breathe, impossible to gain perspective. Distancing through characters changes the vantage point entirely. The mechanic is simple. Write about a painful personal experience in the third person. Treat yourself as a character in a novel. She stood at the door. He felt the silence close around him. The function is immediate. Creative distancing reduces emotional intensity and panic almost instantly.
It creates just enough space between you and the memory for reflection to become possible. And the outcome is a profound shift in identity, from passive victim to narrator with the power to observe and document. You are no longer inside the wave. You are standing on the hill, watching it and writing it down.
Some emotions simply resist language. Grief, terror, shame, they exist as formless internal pressures that seem to defy any attempt at description. Externalizing the internal is the method that handles these emotions. The mechanic? Identify a core emotion, fear, grief, rage, and describe it not as a feeling, but as a physical object. Give it a color, a texture, a shape, a weight. Then place that object in a fictional setting where a character must interact with it. The function? This bypasses internal censorship. By giving the inexpressible a concrete name and form, you smuggle it past the psychological defenses that would normally keep it locked away. And the outcome is neurological. The act of describing and interacting with the object activates the brain's rational centers, aiding in direct emotional regulation. The anchor doesn't disappear, but now you can see it, name it, and begin to move around it.
The fourth method looks forward rather than inward. It asks, what does this struggle mean beyond me and beyond now? Meaning-making and legacy works by writing stories where characters overcome struggles to create a meaningful impact on future generations. Think of it as an envisioned ending that gives birth to new beginnings. The small seedling in the present becoming a vast, sheltering tree. The function? Constructing this generational script shifts the writer's focus from present suffering to long-term purpose. It provides a narrative reason to endure. And the outcome? A strengthened commitment to long-term goals and a new sense of purpose that extends far beyond the current adversity. The struggle becomes not just survivable, but meaningful. You're not just healing yourself. You're writing something that will outlast you. Fiction writing as a healing practice is powerful, and precisely because it is powerful, it requires guardrails. 4 guidelines will protect the process. Time parameters. Follow the Pennebaker protocol. Write for just 15 to 20 minutes a day for 4 consecutive days. Research shows this specific cadence improves physical health and reduces depression. Longer is not better here. Sensory grounding. While drafting difficult scenes, stay anchored in the present by describing physical sensations, the feel of your feet on the floor, the temperature of the room. This prevents dissociation. Physical boundaries. Create a distinct writing space for heavy material, a specific location, a different font, a separate notebook. This signals to your brain that you are entering, and more importantly, can leave this particular territory. Delayed critique. Protect the healing draft. Do not share raw, sensitive material for external feedback until the memory has been integrated. The goal right now is processing, not publishing. At the heart of this entire framework is a single transformative shift. Imagine sitting on a train, watching the world blur past outside the window, unable to control the speed, the direction, or the destination. That is what trauma does to identity. It turns you into a passenger in your own life story. Fiction writing reverses that. It hands you the blueprints. This is the principle of narrative justice, the fundamental right to define your own experiences in your own words, rather than accepting the labels others assign: victim, patient, case number. Reclaiming voice is an act. Telling a story, imposing structure on fragmented memories, is itself an exercise of power. It returns ownership of the experience to the individual. And the result? The individual re-enters the world not as a wounded victim, but as a witness and student, someone with perspective, agency, and a story they chose to tell. Let's bring it all together. The core insight of this entire framework is this: fiction writing is not about escaping reality.
It is a structured mechanism for processing it safely. Through 4 core mechanics: reframing, distancing, externalizing, and meaning-making, fragmented, incoherent memories are transformed into coherent, purposeful stories. And the ultimate goal is not recovery in the narrow sense. It's something larger, a life well lived, a life that is authentically authored. You are not a passive character in a plot written by your wounds. You are the author. The page is open, and the next chapter belongs entirely to you.